In a world where entertainment is viewed as mindless diversion, only good for momentary distraction, one podcast has taken a stand, thoughtfully engaging the art of our day, dissecting the narrative, and pointing the people back to the greatest storyteller of all. You are about to enter a new world, and you will never view entertainment in the same way again. This is Popcorn Theology.
And with that, the last question I'll throw out there, that Miles, you just mentioned it, is like being the mindful consumer. We're trying to teach our kids that. We're the first gatekeepers. So how do you actually determine something is going to be inappropriate content for your kid? So where do you start to draw those lines? And I imagine the lines will probably go out a little bit further as your kid gets older, but how do we start to make those determinations to expose our kids in a pace where they're seeing more and more of the dragon out there, but they're growing up to the point where they can realize that they can defeat the dragon?
Yeah, there's the practical question about the tools, like people who have already watched it and review it.
Yeah.
But preparing for this conversation, I was thinking about how do we even define kids movie? Because the last two kids movies I watched were If and Inside Out 2, and those were movies that were kids level animation and a little bit of the visuals on screen were aimed at kids, but they were really pretty adult movies, or at least teenage movies. And so trying to figure out, okay, what's inappropriate? There are some things that are inappropriate that we might not even think is just things that are going to grow them up too fast. Right. And that just things that are about a topic. My wife is currently in a little bit of a debate with our local library because they want certain books to be read to kids during story time. And we've been trying to analogize to the head librarian. It's like, we don't teach our kids algebra. That's advanced for them. We don't expose them to these big concepts. We don't say, oh, it's okay to sometimes kill people when we're talking about police or something. No, when they're young, we tell them, don't kill people, don't steal, and we don't teach them the exception to the rule before we teach them the rule. And so there's the basic kind of PG-13, PG kind of ratings level, and then there's also just another level of just trying to figure out what really is appropriate for kids, and then in particular, Jam was talking about this. What's appropriate for my kid? Because, right, your son is a sensitive kid, so you might choose not to watch one thing, even if it doesn't have quote unquote objectionable content. You got to know what your kid is ready for.
The maturity of the kid and the content, I think, is the biggest thing of how you determine what is and is not appropriate. When Solomon was younger, we're doing stuff like Dino Ranch, which is awesome. He was really into dinosaurs. His first word was duck, which is why we went to DuckTales. And I don't think it was his first word, but he said duck all the time. But that's why we went the route of DuckTales or Darkwing Duck. Really early on, we're not teaching him things about killing necessarily. Good guy beats up a bad guy, but what he's watching, the bad guy's not being killed. And so it's showing justice, it's showing right and wrong, and that's great. Now he's a little older, so it's like, okay, now we can introduce Power Rangers. And in Power Rangers, the monster blows up. Well, hey, remember how it was justice for Darkwing to beat up these guys? It's actually justice to get rid of that monster. That monster should be taken care of. And the Power Rangers have been empowered to do so. And of course, I could get into Romans 13, right? Governing authority, right?
Yeah, that's a whole other conversation.
But that's a lot of it. And that analogy, Miles, that you had is really great. It's like sexual content has no place. Gender identity has no place in children's movies. It just hands down, objectively, it has no place in it. And so if any of the content that you have has those themes in them, that's where my wife and I would deem it inappropriate. But then also there's the nuance of it. It's like, how prevalent is this? So we watched Onward. the cop said, "My girlfriend." Well, when I was growing up, my grandma would say, "My girlfriend." And she wasn't talking about a romantic partner. She was just genuinely talking about a friend that was her girl. And so how do we spin that to Solomon? Well, there's probably a friend of hers that she's talking about. That's language that's used. That's a one-off kind of thing. We watched Lightyear. We just shielded his eyes in the theater. He didn't see the whole kiss. And then we moved on from it. Like, fantastic. As he gets older, and we're determining what is and is not appropriate, certainly any porneia is never appropriate. And so it's like, he's just not going to see it. He's not going, as far as we can control it, we're going to ensure that our kid's not going to see it. But it goes even outside of the realm of movies, right? You get into video games and those kinds of things. I teach fourth grade. I'm going to be teaching fifth grade this year. What's unfortunate, being even in a Christian private school that I teach at, what's unfortunate is kids are playing games that are entirely too mature for them. Call of Duty, I would even argue probably Fortnite. Like, they're playing games that are too mature for them, and they're picking up on these, what is that, Five Nights at Freddy's or whatever? It's supposedly a horror game. I got a couple kids that love that game. It's like, why are you playing that? Like, why is that okay? That's where I would deem it's inappropriate. You're introducing dark themes to children. You're not protecting their innocence, and you are essentially having them grow up before it's time. But you're having them grow up before it's time, not in the ways they actually need to grow up. You are having them grow up in ways that they don't even need categories for at the point. And so that's part of it too, is like, is this a category that needs to be introduced to my child before it's time? It was Ecclesiastes. There's a time for everything. And so us as parents, we need to know the times. What time is it for our kids? And where can we introduce things? Where should we not?
And remember, you can never take the clock back.
Yeah.
Your kids cannot unsee something.
7 years old. I think I was 7 or 8 years old when I saw Titanic. And we all know what's in Titanic. And it's like, from that point, that innocence that I had is gone at that point. And that introduced horrible, horrible thoughts, and then a lifelong process that by God's grace I've been able to battle. But it's like, why would me having gone through that, why would I want to subject my son to that? And, you see constantly within the Bible,
exactly.
Father sins in a way, and then a son sins in a similar way. Like, you see a progression of that happening. And so I want to break that chain with my son as best as I can. And I want to be able to say to my maker, Father, you gave me this boy, you gave me these boys, and I did everything I could to make sure that they knew you, they loved you, they walked with you, and that they did not make the same mistakes I did. That's parenting. That's what we're called to.
And I didn't make them stumble because I simply got tired.
Because I wanted to have some fun watching a movie.
Yeah.
It's
and this is actually one of those areas where I wouldn't put down Christian content. A lot of the Christian grown-up movies are not great. They're getting better, but they're not great. A lot of the kids' Christian content is pretty good. I mean, you have to watch some things out, but I've been watching things like Superbook, right, where you got two children and a robot go back in time to explore biblical lessons and then apply it to their own life. That's pretty good. The VeggieTales are a little closer to neutral, things like that. So you do have some resources as a Christian, but as a parent, you got to sacrifice some of your movie time. Movie lovers and theology nerds, when you become a parent, that movie lover part of you moves to the back seat in order to love your children well and not.
Good Christian content right now is the Wingfeather Saga. I teach that in fourth grade.
Okay.
It's an entire book series. And then Angel Studios actually has started animating up to 2 seasons. It's phenomenal. It takes Narnia, Tolkien vibes. Great series. Good Christian content there.
Awesome.
All right. Awesome. Well, with that, we'll go ahead and wrap up. Hope you all enjoyed this episode of In the Lobby. We'll put some stuff in the show notes, some of the additional content that we talked about, links to some of the different stuff. But Daddy Miles, Father Jam, thanks for coming on, guys. Thanks for letting me sit in and really just sit in and listen to you guys talk. As I said, I've got the youngest one here, and it's fun watching him grow up. But I'm looking forward to the challenges that you guys have already brought about. So with that, keep engaging movies and cinema and video games from a Christian perspective, and remember, you are not a mindless consumer.